Uh, Ian Smith was mentioned in the introduction to this presentation, and it's time now to have a look at the results of some of his analysis. The summary that follows makes reference to tables which trace their progression across all playoff matches from 9 Rugby World Cup competitions from 87 through to 2019. Here's some of his findings. Scrums completed fell from 92% to only 69%. Scrum penalties increased from 5 to 27%. Scrum collapses from 5 to 40%. Reset scrums from 15 to 36%. First of all, it's a centre field scrum. There is no better attacking situation in a game of rugby than a centre field scrum. The options available for attack here are numerous. However, let's see what happens.
Simple stuff, get over the gain line, look to earn a penalty, kick into the corner.
Okay, get over the gain line, look to force a penalty and kick into the corner. The reason being, of course, to set up a rolling maul from which the probability of scoring a try is quite high. Let's continue.
That is their best opportunity for scoring. Difficult with the ball slippery like it is to go 60 metres and score. There'll be a knock-on with one big hit, but it'll be get across, simple stuff, and look to earn a penalty.
You've got to try in these positions, your leaders like Liam Wright, you have to be able to get to the 40-metre line of the Brumbies.
That's probably enough, but just going back to the scrum itself, when the scrum packs down, the law states that the front row must pack with their shoulders above their hips. The number of scrums where the front rowers, and in fact the second row, or the locks and the breakaways, have their shoulders lower than their hips. It happens all the time, and the scrums are destined to collapse. Which
Penalty,
of course is what
kick into
happens
the
here.
corner. That is the...
Continuing now with Ian's findings, the average time taken to complete a scrum increased from 23 seconds to 71 seconds, 209% increase. Time taken to assemble a scrum has increased from 9 to 46 seconds, a 411% increase. The graph down below here shows the time for whistle to crouch. We'll go back in 1987, where of course the scrum protocol now, where the referee dictates the start of a scrum, that there was no such protocol back in 1987. So from literally the whistle being blown to the props adopting a crouch position was 9 seconds. In 2019, that's 46. That's only from whistle to crouch, not whistle to completion. And by completion, we mean either possession was gained, there was a further scrum collapse and a reset scrum, or of course a penalty. So since 1987, scrum completion time is now 4.5 times longer. The number of set plays reduced significantly from 60% and lineouts by 56%. Penalties from scrums have increased from 7%, 87, to 19% of all penalties now are from the scrums. And despite the reduction in scrum numbers, by the way, the number of penalties has increased. Remember, there's been a drastic decrease in the number of scrums in the games anyway. The increase in the number of rucks and mauls per game from 94 to 178, that's a 90% increase from 95 to 2015. And there's a huge increase in the number of, there has been a huge increase, as we've seen, to the number of breakdowns, and the percentage increase in the number of penalties is highly significant. Now at the breakdown, it's gone from 16% penalties at the breakdown in 87 to 42% now in 2019. More of Ian's findings. The number of time-off periods before scrums has increased from 15% to 49%. A decrease in the number of penalties for offside and an increase in those awarded for infringements at the breakdown. An increase of electing a kick for touch from a penalty and a decrease in choosing the option of a penalty attempt at goal. This is one of those unintended consequences of the law change. It is probably more likely, or as likely, for a team to score from a rolling maul after a kick to the corner than it is from a penalty goal, say from 40 or 50 metres out.
You've got to make those right decisions.
Watch the video.
When the game's in the balance. 2.5 minutes in the game of rugby now to finish it is just one scrum.
The comment, 2.5 minutes now to finish the game, is just one scrum.
This first scrum will go down. It'll take a minute to pack the next one. And then it's 10 seconds of ball play.
The comment there again. Cape is predicting the scrum will go down, and then there'll be another minute wasted packing the scrum, which is going to leave about 10 seconds for ball play.
Connor needs to know that. He needs to make better decisions at the big end of the game.
Reds must earn a penalty from this scrum, so they're going to have to put everything into it. Minute remaining.
I think we've seen enough of that scrum. Okay, moving on. Let's look at a bit more detail at the scrum and the problems we have at scrum time. Scrums are killing the game, and they're denying spectators of what the vast majority would like to see.
They'll keep the ball in the back and try and get something out of this scrum so Pollard can knock another 3 over.
Once again, Timmy Horan's comment. The Springboks will keep the ball at the back of the scrum and try to force a penalty so Pollard, who hardly ever misses, can kick yet another penalty. And once again, the Springboks here have an excellent attacking opportunity from a centre field scrum. Let's see if they achieve their goal.
Stay strong. Stay strong. Strong. No move. Don't move.
On average at professional level, more than 16 minutes of playing time per game is wasted while referees stage manage scrum contests, which have a completion rate of just over 60%. The scrums at professional level are packed at such a ridiculously low level. Look, I majored in physics and maths and taught those subjects for 23 years, but you don't have to be an expert in mechanics to see that the scrums like this are simply doomed to be unstable and doomed to collapse. Now, when scrums are packed this low, look, it's impossible for hookers to get their feet up anywhere near the tunnel. And yet by law, the law states that the hooker of the team, the loose head pack, must strike with the ball. There's no way that he can do so. So the law now, the lawmakers have recently made a change to the law where the scrum half can align himself opposite his loose head, not opposite the centre of the tunnel. That's one thing. And unless he puts the ball in crooked, there is no way the hooker can actually get a foot on the ball anyway. So we see time and time again, as over here in this initial clip, where the scrum half aligns himself, as mentioned before here, notice, opposite his own loose head prop, and then puts the ball in directly behind his own hooker's foot, which is miles back from the centre of the tunnel, because it's impossible at that angle, packing at that angle, to get his feet up anywhere near the edge of the tunnel, let alone the centre of the tunnel. Scrums are killing the game. What's your decision? An interesting clip to watch here. I've stopped the clip there now. There is a whole section of this presentation on referees' decisions, but here I suppose we're overlapping referees' decisions in scrummaging. But here we have a dominant Waratahs pack over the Chiefs. What would your decision be at this point? The referee gives a penalty. What would your decision be? Well, this is the decision the referee gives. Okay, and the referee has ruled that the Waratahs pack have not remained straight. Now, sure, that scrum has rotated, but whether it was because the Waratahs were not trying to scrum straight, or simply there was just complete instability from a lack of pressure from the Chiefs' side of the scrum. However, the penalty was given, and I think if I showed this to a dozen different referees and stopped it at the point I did before, you'd probably have at least 50% of different decisions being made. It's clear that the use of a penalty as a sanction for the majority of scrum infringements is a serious impediment to the flow of a game. This is a comment made by Francois Lowe after the 2019 Rugby World Cup. Remember, the Springboks were victorious, defeating England in the World Cup final. And this was a comment he made. The set piece tonight, our scrum was simply magnificent, to say the least. To get set piece penalties in a final, I don't think you can ask more from your tight five.
Malcolm Martin starting in the 15 is because they really rate his scrummaging ability, Kearnsy. The Springbok players say this guy is so strong, so powerful. What holds Malcolm Marx off, and they want to try to dominate the scrum. They generated a penalty before. Can they do it again?
They've generated a penalty before. Can they do it again? There is no doubt South Africa were the superior side in that final of the Rugby World Cup. However, there's also no doubt that despite the fact that England went into that game thinking they'd dominate the scrum, it was dominated by South Africa, and more than probably anything else, that was the reason for South Africa's victory.
And the tyre on his left.
Good scrum by the Reds. They get the penalty.
Now, once again, I suppose we look at referees' decisions here. Queensland, the Reds certainly had the dominant scrum. The ball was at the number 8's feet. There was no intention when the referee blew the whistle for a penalty of the Reds pack doing anything else but attempting to force a penalty. But they could have, and what a marvellous opportunity with the Brumbies pack being driven backwards, and therefore the defence line being driven backwards from a centre field scrum, for the ball to be released to the backs for some sort of entertaining attack. The referee could quite easily have played an advantage to see if Queensland were going to use the ball by distributing to the backs. But the action of the scrum itself and holding the ball at the back didn't really look like they were ever going to release the ball. But celebrations, because we have another penalty. The scrum laws are in urgent need of a review, uncontaminated by vested interests, to produce a protocol that maintains the scrum as an important feature of the game, that does not generate a feast of penalties, that does not waste an inordinate amount of time, and does not continue as a source of great annoyance and frustration for all viewers and spectators. The percentage of scrums completed, again from 1987 to 2019, have gone from 92% completion rate to 67%.
One of us on thick
Rod
again
Capers,
about
Damien Comic.
applying pressure to the Welsh scrum. One penalty each. Position again if they can.
Have a look at that magnificent attacking position.
Going forward, they want to hold it at the back if they can. They think they've got an edge.
They want to hold at the back if they can. They think they've got an edge.
Puts it in. So
I was wondering why the Australian backs were so deep and forfeiting an absolutely fantastic attacking position. And where I think that was planned, the kick was planned, I believe, but I mean, why kick in such a magnificent attacking position to start off with? And even if they're going to kick, why they'd be so deep anyway is beyond me. Rugby World Cup final matches only. Have a look in 87, the average number of scrums was 30, in 2019, 11. The average time lost for scrums was 11 minutes in 87 and 14 minutes in 2019. But that's despite the fact there's 1/3 of the scrums compared to 1987, but there's still 14 minutes time lost. So the percentage of time of the game time lost in 87 was 14%. 17% in 2019. The whistle to feed in 87 was 23 seconds and 56 seconds in 2019. Repeating the same sort of thing there that's shown in that
charge down.
Let's go
Play
back.
on.
Let's return to 1987.
Yeah, but he couldn't hold on.
Yeah, 1987, the World Cup final between
When you
the
charge
All
down a
Blacks
kick, it's
and
quite
France.
okay if the ball
Let's see
travels
how long it
forward
takes
from
for the
your hands.
scrums to pack back
And we're
in
only 10 metres
87.
out from the New Zealand goal line. New Zealand now with a test of character.
From whistle
That's a much
to
better-
feed, 15 seconds.
They go at the back. Not in straight. Wayne Shelford, the man who figured in that front car up in Ballymore last week with that killing uppercut which decked Hugh Richards. That was the semi-finals between New Zealand and Wales.
Whistle to feed, 21 seconds.
Together.
Longer than average for 87.
Well, Ken Catchpole made the point, Mark, that Bibizier tried to do a little bit too much at times instead of passing the ball straight away.
Well, that's right. The New Zealanders know that he's the key man in this French side. If they can control him, they...
And the third of the scrums, whistle to feed, 18 seconds, with an average of around about 19 seconds from whistle to feed. There are 18 seconds, was the average over those three scrums. In 2007, the new protocol was introduced for the setting of scrums, as we're well aware. Now, I'm not going to read through all the text in this presentation. You can do so by stopping and pausing the video. But from the Rugby World Cup 2015 to 19, the calling of a time off during the scrum time increased from 33% to 49%. We're referring to there, the whistle goes for a scrum. Shortly after, somebody sits down, pulls up their socks, takes a bit of dirt off their tags, feigns some sort of an injury because there's a problem with endurance. And of course, then we've got all the trainers coming on the field with water bottles, and that usually lasts anything from 30 seconds to another minute before the game resumes. Scrums are killing the game. Players and team officials have now devised strategies to use the scrummage as an opportunity to fabricate rest periods by gaming the laws, particularly in high-pressure games. The ploy is used by players and coaches to manage energy levels and to slow the game down, allowing players to manage their endurance better. Another highly relevant comment by Tim
resets of scrums. This Rugby World Cup's taking 2, 3, sometimes 4 minutes, 4 to 6 minutes at times, and you utilise that opportunity to take it. That's strategically smart. But
in the Rugby World Cup, scrums are taking 2, 4, sometimes 6 minutes to complete.
Look at ball in play. We're in a game where people want to see the ball in play.
More of Ian's stats from the 2019 Rugby World Cup. Average time wasted per game per country. Now that covers Tier 1 nations participating and Japan. And it's interesting to see that the top two teams as far as time wasting was concerned were South Africa and England, who of course participated in the final. If you can compare the box time wasting with that of New Zealand, for example, the box wasted 38% more time than the blacks. They certainly made maximum use of their time off periods prior to scrum and line-out, obviously to give their the forwards a little bit of a break before those contests. I'm not going to go through everything on this page, but I can jump down to the bottom where it says, despite the widespread but inconsistent use of time-saving practices at scrum time, when all time-lost parts of the 2019 Rugby World Cup games were taken into account, the average time in play for 45 games was only 34 minutes 42 seconds. And for the 8 final series games, a little bit of, but pretty poor, but a couple of minutes increase, 36 minutes and 4 seconds. Before 2017, if you go to the laws of rugby union, before 2017, not the 2020 book, it states this: the purpose of the scrum is to restart play quickly, safely and fairly after a minor infringement or stoppage. Now, the law book now, 2020, states this: the purpose of the scrum is to restart play with a contest for possession after a minor infringement or stoppage. So it's gone from quick, safely and fairly to with a contest for possession. Now, surely this is an admission by World Rugby, that that the scrum is no longer quick, nor safe, nor fair. After 33 years of analysis, it's time to look carefully at some of the conclusions that Ian Smith has come up with. The responsibility to protect player safety is unquestioned. However, the provisions and interpretations of the laws to achieve this objective have shown little imagination and have shown to be largely ineffective. Given the stubborn refusal of World Rugby to reconsider the obvious deficiencies in the way the scrum is conducted and the increasing inactivity surrounding scrums, there is little prospect that the scrum protocol and frustrating time wasting will be addressed. Ian says that the law book literally needs to be turned upside down and amendments considered. And his final words, the unintended consequences of the current scrum protocol are plain for those who choose to look with unbiased eyes. It has provoked the response of selecting bigger and heavier players, many of whom struggle with the physical demands of the modern game. Their response is understandable. They seek to increase recovery time. This analysis makes clear there is a significant time wastage at all levels of rugby competition, and that it is a challenge to the welfare of the game, particularly at the elite level. Time wastage is a problem for spectators and for the welfare of the game. To take no action is irresponsible. Administrators of rugby need to recognise that the level of time wastage is at variance with the spirit of the game, and that the interests of the game, the players and the spectators are important enough to warrant action to address this issue. The scrum, as we know, presents the best attacking platform for a great variety of attack, and throughout the years this phase more than any other has resulted in the most exciting attacking plays. Let's finish our consideration of the scrum with a short video.
They put it in, they take it out, the Brumbies. Wow, this is a good run from you ahead, and out it goes to Banks, who holds it up, and Tom Banks backs himself. What a finish! What a finish by Tom Banks!
On the back door, Powell, he gets it to Tom Banks, gets outside him. O'Connor gets it back to Andy Muirhead now. Stevenson can't make the tackle. The inside ball, who wants it? It's been picked up by Ryan O'Connor.
Sliding in behind Morga. Good use. Sends it out the back for Reece. He goes across to Bridge. Reece to Bridge. George Bridge. 3 away now. Can they ice it? New Zealand getting close.
In the 1987 Rugby World Cup final between New Zealand and France, there were 36 completed scrums that resulted in a great variety of attacking plays. In 2019, there were 8 scrums that yielded clean possession, and 4 resulted in penalties. Attack from the 8 scrums resulted in less than 4 passes being made by players other than the scrum halves. The solution is not to have less scrums, but to have more that are safe, certainly, but that do not rob the match of game time. They result in far less penalties, involve less instructions by referees, and most importantly, result in clean possession for the use of the non-offending team.